Hi guys, Tara here. Welcome back to Crafting with Curly Cues and day 4 of my Handmade Holiday series. Today I'm going to be doing some watercoloring with some perfect pearls to create that really awesome gold shimmer there. So I've started with some circles from my We Are Memory Keeper stacked circle dies, and this circle that's going to be the front panel is cut out of some Canson XL cold press watercolor paper. And I'm going to be doing some heat embossing. So I've taken my Versamark ink and my little embossing buddy there and prepped my paper. And then I'm using that Warm Heart stamp set from Paper Smooches. And I've just taken one of the more background images from that stamp set. It's this adorable little holly berry and leaves image. And I'm going to be embossing that with my Ranger Superfine White embossing powder all over the background of this piece. So as I'm stamping, I'm kind of pausing after I do a few to apply that embossing powder, and that's just mostly so that I can see where I've already stamped, because that Versamark is a clear ink, and that way I don't stamp on top of each other. I actually do that in one spot, but I just put my sentiment on top of it, so it worked out. But that's why you see me pause in the middle and kind of apply the embossing powder. So this is an idea that I wanted to do. I wanted to do a shaped card, so I'm going to show you guys how to put together the circle card. And then I also was thinking, what can I do to create a really fun shimmery gold? And this was completely experimental. I had no idea if this was going to work or not. One of those ideas that, when you're laying there at night trying to fall asleep and I just get like cards floating through my brain, and I try to hold on to the ideas that I really like, because most of the time when I wake up in the morning I can't remember what the heck I was thinking about. But this one stuck in there, so I decided to give it a try. So I'm starting out by taking just some plain water, and I'm just applying water to the background in between all the holly berries on my piece there. So now that I've done that, I'm just going to use a Post-it to create a little scoop, and I'm going to put a little bit of this gold Perfect Pearls pigment into my water. So I've kind of done this where I've spritzed the white Perfect Pearls, the pearl color, onto some watercolor. And so really where this came from was, I was like, what if you use some of the other colors of Perfect Pearls and you just applied it directly onto the paper, like as your watercolor? I just wanted to see what would happen. So you can see I put the pigment in the water and I swirled it up and kind of made a color there. And now I'm just taking all of that essentially watercolor paint color that I've created now, and I'm applying it onto my base here in the background where I've already wet, and it's just kind of flowing around where it wants to go. And you can see it's working pretty well. The pigment is spreading out pretty good. It does look watercolory. I know the video is kind of hard to see how it's going on there, but in real life you can see the watercolor has that kind of, you can see the where it flows and ebbs, and it's kind of an imperfect way to color, which is part of what's pretty about it. And you do get that effect when you do this. There's definitely some spots that had more of the Perfect Pearl powder in it and some spots that had less, so it was definitely kind of that imperfect look. But I was really surprised and pleased by how much of the pigment powder stayed kind of spread out evenly. I was kind of worried that the powder would swirl around and you'd get some just plain white spots, but that didn't really seem to happen. And I did notice later that it definitely depends on how much pigment you put in your water. You definitely want to put more pigment if you're wanting a more solid coverage of the gold, and a little bit less of the powder if you want it to be more of a wash. So I first went with just making sure I got some color all over, and you can see how that's shimmering and shining there. And then I hit the whole thing with my heat tool to dry that first layer of this water. So I'm just going over and I'm keeping my heat tool moving so that I don't reactivate all that embossing that I've already put on there. And you can kind of see at this angle where it's super shimmery, but then you can also kind of see where it's kind of splotchy looking. So now I'm just going to go back in over the top in some of the areas that have a little bit less gold. And now that the first layer is dry, this just kind of puts another layer right on top of that first layer. And it's really going to help evenly disperse all the gold. I love this Perfect Pearl pigment. Look how shiny that is. Like, it's so pretty, and it's so pretty in real life, and it just depends on what direction you tilt it. You get a whole different look. It turned out really fun, and I was really pretty pleased. So it's just kind of a way that you can take a product that's made for one thing and play with it and experiment and turn it into something completely different, because I've certainly never done this with Perfect Pearls. Maybe that's just me. Maybe everybody knows about this, but I thought this was pretty cool. So now that I'm all done with my background, I'm going to finish coloring my holly berries, and I'm just using a couple different colors of my Zig clean color real brush markers, and I'm just applying some red to the holly berries and then some green to half of each leaf. And the reason I'm only putting it on half is because I'm now going to come back in with just my water brush, and I'm going to use some water to spread that color around and give it that kind of watercolory look. So this is just really simple. I really wanted this just to be a nice basic background. The eye-catching part is that really pretty gold shimmer, and that was, that was enough for me. I was not wanting to make this too complicated. And it's another great way that you can use your stamp sets and take maybe one of those smaller stamps that's not meant to be a focal point and turn it into the focal point of your card. So that's what I did with this holly berry. You can see in the middle I completely forgot to color those two. That's not for a special reason. That's just because I forgot. So I will go back in later and get those taken care of. So this is really simple. I'm not taking care to do anything fancy. All I'm really trying to do is not go outside the lines, which is nice and easy because I did heat emboss it, which creates kind of those little wells so that the pigment stays inside the image that you're coloring. So that's super handy. So I didn't even really have to do too much. This was a fun project. I had a whole day kind of to myself, and I got to be in my craft room experimenting, doing things. I was able to get 2 cards made and 2 videos filmed, which is awesome because I do work full time, so I'm always kind of struggling to make sure that I get enough time to get all my videos filmed. So this was a fun little day in my craft room. So now that I'm all done painting, I just took a paper towel and wiped some of that color off of that white embossing. And now I'm just kind of looking at it and going, ooh, in the shimmery sunlight, because I just love the way that gold is shimmering around there. So now I'm going to start assembling my card. So first I'm going to go in and I'm going to stamp my greeting. So I've got a different Paper Smooches stamp set here, and this stamp set is called the Swanky Snow Dudes. How cute is that? And I'm going to use a greeting from this set. That Warm Heart set didn't have any Christmas specific greetings, and I really wanted this to be a holiday card. So I'm taking the season's greetings from this stamp set and just lining it up on my long block here, and I am going to stamp that in some Versamark ink on a scrap of that Simon Says Stamp Schoolhouse Red cardstock, and that is the same color that I cut the accent circle out of for my card base. So I will heat emboss that in the same white, and that will just tie all that white color in together. And then I will take my paper trimmer and just trim this little sentiment up into a nice skinny little strip that's going to go on the front of my card. So I am using my coffee filters again. This is like the thing everybody else knew about. I was totally late to the show, but I'm fascinated and love the way that it works for my heat embossing. And then I'm going to just heat emboss that sentiment so you get that nice bright white pop. So this is how I'm doing the back of my card. I'm taking the circle that I cut for the base out of some Nina cardstock, and I'm scoring it at 1/2 inch and making sure it's nice and folded there. And then I'm going to just use a piece of score tape because it is a really nice strong adhesive that I know is going to stay stuck. And I'm going to stick it on that little flap that I have just scored and created for the back panel of my card. So I could have done 2 pieces of white and then just glued the whole front panel on the front, or I could have done 2 pieces of red. I chose to go with the white in the back so that you're able to write on the inside. So you could do this with whatever colors you want. So now I'm taking my front circle and I'm just lining those up, and I'm going to very carefully push that score tape together, and now you can see I have a card that just opens, no problem. The back piece is scored and the front piece is a nice solid circle. So it's just a really easy way to take your circle dies and create a fun shaped card. I don't know exactly what size this one is. I want to say it's probably about a 4.5 or a 5-inch circle, so you can do whatever size you like. So I am going to generously apply some adhesive with my ATG gun to the back of my watercolor piece because it did warp just a little bit, and I'm going to stick that right on the front of my card, and then I get that fun schoolhouse red border that kind of matches the berries in the holly and brings that out a little bit, and I do really like the way that the gold looks against that dark red. So I'm going to put a ribbon end by cutting up the middle and then going from each corner to the top of that little slit on my banner for my sentiment here, and then just decide where I'm going to want that on the front of the card, and then flip it over and very carefully trim the excess off so that it's the same circle shape as the rest of my card. I'm going to pop that up with some foam squares from Best Creation. I hate peeling the backs off of these little things, so I don't use them very often, but they fit perfectly on the back of this banner, so I went for it. And then I'm just going to pop this right up on the card there and make sure that that little edge that I cut lines up. So now you could be done. You could leave this here. I think it's very pretty just as it is. I, of course, can't resist going in and adding more because I never know when to leave well enough alone. So I started by taking some Christmas red stickles and I just put a little dot of stickles over all those holly berries. And I actually really liked the addition of this. It added some sparkle to go with that golden shine. And it also made those berries a little bit deeper red, so it matched that cardstock a little bit better than the brighter red that I'd chosen for my Zig Clean Color markers there. So once that is on, I am then going to take my white Signo Uniball gel pen, and I am just going to go around the entire outside of that watercolor panel on the on the red cardstock and do some dash lines. So I went ahead and skipped most of this because it takes me a ridiculously long time to do dash lines, but that's because I want to try to make it look as good as possible. I also put some sparkling clear sequins on the front because I can't handle it, and that is the finished card for today. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this video, give me a big thumbs up, hit subscribe. I'm going to list and link all the supplies over at my blog, and here are the links to a couple other days in my Handmade Holiday video series. Thanks so much, guys. Bye.